Welcome, operatives, to the Corporate Files Lab, Casefile 013. Today's intelligence briefing, Project Goliath and the 2040 acceleration.
And this is a critical briefing for anyone trying to navigate the current macro environment.
It really is, because for decades, the fundamental operating system of our entire global economy has been based on this one core assumption.
Right. The idea that technological progress will always save us from resource collapse.
Exactly. We've always just kind of assumed that human innovation would outpace planetary depletion. But what if the counterintuitive is true? What if our supposed savior technology is, well, actually the parasite that kills the host?
That right there is the ultimate systemic vulnerability you are navigating today. As an operative trying to anticipate market and logistical movements in this incredibly volatile landscape, you really have to look past the marketing abstraction.
Some buzzwords.
Yeah, the buzzwords. We are constantly sold this illusion of the cloud as this frictionless, infinite, ethereal space.
Yeah.
But the clinical reality is that the digital revolution has just collided with a very rigid, very unforgiving physical wall.
And to understand the architecture of that wall, we actually have to pull a blueprint that predicted it, and predicted it with terrifying precision over 50 years ago.
You're talking about the MIT study.
I am. I'm talking about the 1972 MIT study, The Limits to Growth, which, for anyone who hasn't read it, it wasn't some dystopian sci-fi thought experiment.
No, not at all.
It was a rigorous mathematical calculation. They built a system dynamics model called World3 to simulate exactly how population, industrial output, natural resources, and pollution all interact over time.
And what's crucial for you to understand about that World3 model is that it wasn't designed to predict exact dates.
Right. It wasn't saying, the world ends on a Tuesday in 2040.
Exactly. It was designed to identify the behavior modes of a global system, a system that is defined by exponential growth, but, trapped within a finite physical environment. They ran multiple scenarios, but the one that maps almost perfectly onto our current trajectory is called BAU2.
Business as usual, too.
Right.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the mechanism here is vital. In the original standard run of their model, the global system collapses simply because it runs out of raw materials.
Which is what everyone focuses on, scarcity.
Yeah, but in BAU2, they changed the parameters. They simulated a world where we magically find double the natural resources, or where we achieve some massive technological efficiency that effectively doubles what we have.
And the cynical twist is that doubling the resources doesn't actually delay the collapse.
It accelerates it, right?
It actually guarantees a much more violent one.
Yeah.
In the BAU2 simulation, the relaxation of resource constraints simply allows the industrial system to grow faster and to grow much larger.
So it builds more.
Exactly. When you have abundant resources, you build more factories. More factories generate more industrial output, which inevitably generates exponentially more pollution and environmental friction.
So the system doesn't starve to death, it suffocates.
It suffocates on its own output.
Yeah.
The collapse in BAU2 doesn't happen because we run out of oil or copper. It happens because we reach a tipping point of environmental friction.
Meaning the cleanup costs too much.
Yes, the fraction of global capital required just to abate pollution, to manage agricultural failures and repair environmental damage, it becomes so immense that it starves the industrial sector itself. You're forced to divert all your investment capital just to clean up the mess.
Leaving absolutely nothing to maintain the infrastructure that actually keeps the economy running.
Precisely.
It's like putting a massive top-of-the-line jet engine in a rusted-out car and giving it a bottomless gas tank.
A great analogy.
The problem isn't that you're going to run out of gas. The problem is that the chassis is going to rattle itself to pieces from the sheer output of the engine. But I have to push back on this premise a little bit.
Go ahead.
Because the entire corporate narrative right now is that technology, specifically artificial intelligence, is supposed to be that doubled resource that fixes the friction. We're told AI will optimize our power grids, discover new zero-waste materials, and literally solve the climate crisis. How can the ultimate optimization tool be the cause of the collapse?
What's fascinating here is that the 2026 recalibration of the World3 model reveals that AI has actually mutated into our primary friction point.
Wait, really? AI is the friction?
AI is the jet engine in your analogy, and it is actively driving the capital drain that BAU2 warned us about. We're seeing this in the macroeconomic data right now. The World Bank's latest Global Economic Prospects report shows that we have officially hit what the model calls the stall phase.
Stall phase. So growth is stopping.
Completely flatlining. Global industrial output per capita has plateaued. Global goods trade growth has slowed to just 2.2%. The jet engine is rapidly losing thrust because it's hitting the absolute physical limits of the planet.
Which means we need to look at what that jet engine is using for fuel.
Yeah.
Because AI is completely misunderstood by the general public as a software phenomenon.
It's treated like magic.
Right. But it's not. It is a thermodynamic parasite. Every single time you generate an intelligent prompt, you are accelerating the physical depletion of the global power grid.
We have to strip away the Silicon Valley terminology here. You cannot download a copper mine.
Yeah.
You cannot write Python code to manifest a high-voltage transformer. The physical supply chain is quite literally buckling under the weight of these hyperscale data center buildouts. In 2026, the lead time just to get a high-voltage transformer delivered has stretched to 36 months.
3 years. Just to get a transformer.
3 years. The digital revolution has hit the physical wall. Major tech conglomerates are hitting a hard ceiling. Look at Amazon's $20 billion data center investment in Australia.
Right, the AEU facility.
To make that facility viable, they could just plug into the existing grid. The grid would have collapsed. They had to aggressively secure over 170 megawatts of new capacity through massive immediate solar commitments across Victoria and Queensland just to turn the servers on.
Because we are assuming a level of cloud elasticity that relies on a physical infrastructure that is already tapped out.
Tapped out and highly fragile.
And the environmental toll of forcing this elasticity is staggering. There's recent public health data showing that training a single AI model the size of Llama 3.1 produces fine particulate air pollution equivalent to driving a car back and forth between Los Angeles and New York City over 10,000 times.
It's an immense physical cost.
We are literally degrading global air quality and public health so an algorithm can learn to mimic human speech.
Which brings us to the collapse of ERI, energy return on investment. For any operative analyzing long-term systemic stability, this is the only metric that truly matters. EROI measures the energy you get out of a resource compared to the energy you have to expend to extract it. In 1950, the EROI of global oil was 44.4.
Meaning for every 1 barrel of oil's worth of energy you spent drilling, you got over 44 barrels back.
Correct. It was a massive, unprecedented thermodynamic surplus.
A 44-to-1 return.
That surplus is what built the modern world. Built the highways, the hospitals, the aviation industry, the middle class. But that ratio is an absolute freefall right now. By 2050, models project the global EROI for oil will drop to 6.7.
That is a massive drop.
And it gets worse. The single-cycle Lotka-Volterra models project that EROI will cross the event horizon, meaning extending below 1 by 2081.
Wait, hold on. Break down that jargon for me. What is a Lotka-Volterra model, and what does it mean practically if EROI goes below 1?
Sure. Lotka-Volterra is traditionally a biological model used to track predator-prey dynamics in an ecosystem, like wolves and rabbits. But macroeconomic analysts apply it to energy. We are the predator, and easily accessible fossil fuels are the prey. As the prey becomes scarce, the predator has to expend much more energy to hunt.
So you're running farther for the same meal?
Exactly. An EROI below 1 means you are burning more energy to extract the oil than the oil actually contains. The well becomes an energy sink, not a source. It becomes mathematically pointless to drill.
Wow.
And right now, as we are forced to use incredibly energy-intensive methods like hydraulic fracturing and deep-sea drilling to scrape up that declining net energy, AI data centers are aggressively cannibalizing whatever industrial surplus we have left.
So what does this all mean? Let me get this straight. We are spending historically unprecedented amounts of energy, fracturing subterranean bedrock and drilling miles beneath the ocean floor, just so a server farm in a desert can generate a synthetic picture of a cat in a spacesuit.
From a clinical thermodynamic perspective, yeah.
That's insane.
It is. It is Jevons paradox operating on a planetary scale. William Stanley Jevons was an economist in the 19th century who observed that making coal engines more efficient didn't reduce coal consumption.
Right, it made it cheaper.
It actually exploded coal consumption because it made it cheaper and more widely applicable. AI makes computation exponentially more powerful, which exponentially increases the global demand for computation. We are trading our long-term systemic resilience for short-term computational parlor tricks.
We are burning the foundational, irreplaceable resources of the Earth to power a digital overlay that does not sustain biological life.
That is the grim reality of it.
And we are doing all of this on a global grid that is held together by duct tape. We're burning the furniture to keep the AI servers humming. But grids aren't just stressed by data centers, they're stressed by geography.
And geopolitics.
Exactly. What happens to this incredibly fragile thermodynamic house of cards when someone physically unplugs the main power cord?
Well, you get the current situational reality in the Persian Gulf. As intelligence operatives, we have to analyze these recent kinetic events strictly through a clinical macroeconomic supply chain lens.
Right. Remove the politics. Look at the logistics.
Exactly. Over the past 48 hours, the joint U.S.-Israeli operations Epic Fury and Lion's Roar targeted leadership and military sites across Iran.
And the Iranian response was massive.
A massive salvo of over 400 ballistic missiles and 1,000 drones.
We saw the footage of those salvos. But from a purely supply chain perspective, what was the actual target matrix?
They didn't just hit military installations. They targeted the sovereign logistical infrastructure of all 6 Gulf Cooperation Council states simultaneously. The UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia. They struck the Fifth Fleet headquarters in Manama.
But the real blow was economic.
The true strategic blow was entirely economic. The Strait of Hormuz is now effectively closed to commercial traffic. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps declared it closed, and the global maritime insurance markets instantly agreed.
Explain what that means mechanically, because a strait doesn't have a physical door you can lock.
It means war risk insurance was officially withdrawn for the entire Persian Gulf. If a ship doesn't have insurance, it legally and financially cannot transit.
They just won't move.
They can't. Major shipping lines, Maersk, MSC, Hapag-Lloyd, have entirely suspended operations in the region. You currently have over 150 ultra-large crude carriers and container ships essentially parked, anchored outside the strait, unable to move.
Let's quantify that disruption. We are talking about 20% of the world's daily oil supply instantly trapped.
Yes.
But it's not just oil. I'm looking at reports that Iranian drones struck Qatar Energy's facilities.
Yeah, that's a critical data point. Qatar accounts for roughly a fifth of the globe's liquefied natural gas export capacity. That entire output is now completely offline with zero timeline for resumption.
So a fifth of global LNG is just gone.
Gone. This is no longer just a regional conflict. It is a targeted, deliberate siege on the global supply chain. If we go back to the World 3 model we discussed earlier, the closure of Hormuz acts as the system's manual override.
It accelerates the timeline.
It takes the gradual industrial decline curve that was predicted for the late 2030s, and it forces that curve to go vertical overnight. European benchmark gas prices spiked 50% almost instantly upon the news.
Here's where it gets really interesting, and by interesting, I mean terrifying. Modern global logistics operates entirely on a just-in-time basis.
JIT supply chains.
Right. JIT supply chains were designed to maximize corporate profit margins by eliminating redundancy and stripping out inventory buffers. You don't store a month's worth of parts, you have them arrive the morning you need them.
Which removes all shock absorbers from the system.
Completely. Because of this, most major urban centers only have a 72-hour food inventory on hand at supermarkets and distribution centers. If the transportation network is interrupted by a fuel shock, that urban population faces an immediate starvation window. And then there's the cruelest irony of this entire situation, which is the green energy transition.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the paradox is stark. The global transition to renewable energy, the massive solar farms, the offshore wind turbines, the utility-scale battery arrays is 100% dependent on the existing fossil fuel infrastructure functioning perfectly.
Exactly. You need diesel to run the heavy machinery that mines the copper and lithium. You need bunker fuel to power the cargo ships transporting the solar panels from manufacturing hubs in Asia. You need petroleum-based polymers to manufacture the resin in wind turbine blades.
All of it requires cheap energy.
So if the green transition requires cheap, abundant oil to physically build, and that cheap oil just got cut off at the Strait of Hormuz, I mean, are we essentially locked inside a burning building without the tools to build the fire escape?
That is the precise clinical reality of our current paradigm. The trap shuts. The illusion that we could smoothly, gradually transition away from fossil fuels while simultaneously escalating geopolitical tensions in the primary fossil fuel extraction zone, well, it has been completely shattered.
The deterrence failed.
The current has fundamentally failed, and the extreme vulnerability of our energy-dependent technological ambition is fully exposed. You cannot electrify a global economy when the underlying energy required to manufacture that electrification is trapped behind a kinetic blockade.
So with the physical world hitting a wall and supply chains literally burning, how are the architects of the global economy reacting? Because they aren't trying to deploy resources to fix the system.
You know, they're not trying to save it. They're trading it.
Yeah.
We have to look at market behavior as a primary intelligence indicator. Following the Hormuz closure, Traditional equities reacted exactly as you'd expect. The S&P 500 initially plunged 2.5%. Brent crude spiked past $80 a barrel. But look closely at the ISM Manufacturing Prices Paid Index. It exploded to 70.5.
Break down the ISM index for us. Why should an operative care about that specific metric?
The ISM Prices Paid Index tracks the input costs for manufacturers. It measures what companies are actually paying for raw materials. When it spikes to 70.5, it means the fundamental cost of making anything in the physical world just skyrocketed,
Because of the supply chain friction?
driven by supply chain friction and embedded war premiums. It's an inflation harbinger. But the traditional equities markets only tell half the story here. The real institutional action is happening in the shadow exchange.
I'll be back.
Exactly. In 2026, the most liquid markets are no longer traditional stocks or bonds. They are event contracts on Polymarket and other decentralized prediction platforms. Billions of dollars are currently flowing into derivative bets on geopolitical disaster.
But I have to challenge this framing a bit. Wall Street has always hedged against risk. I mean, if there's a hurricane, people trade oil futures. Why are we calling this the weaponization of salience rather than just standard, cynical crisis hedging?
This raises an important question for any operative managing risk. What happens to a global system when the financial incentives of its most powerful actors become completely decoupled from the physical survival of the system itself?
They profit from the collapse.
Because of the scale and the fundamental shift in the flow of capital. Institutional capital and elite actors are looking at the 2040 acceleration curve. They're looking at the World 3 BAU2 collapse scenario, and they're deciding that mitigation is a bad investment.
That's incredibly bleak.
Capital is no longer flowing toward preventing the crisis. It is flowing entirely toward monetizing the demise. They're turning the inevitable physical constraints of the planet into a highly liquid, tradable asset class. The profit motive has perfectly aligned with systemic collapse.
It's exactly like Wall Street watching the Titanic hit the iceberg, and instead of trying to patch the hull or hand out life vests, they immediately pull out their trading terminals and start selling futures on the temperature of the water. They are literally betting on the speed of the sinking, which means the system isn't broken. It's functioning exactly as it is currently incentivized to function. The friction is the product.
Precisely. And if we return to the AI data center energy challenge we discussed at the start of this briefing, this is exactly why securing physical infrastructure and energy capacity has become a ruthless, zero-sum game among the tech elite.
They see the writing on the wall.
The organizations that truly understand this vulnerability are no longer just investing in software abstractions. They are aggressively buying up long-term power purchase agreements, co-located nuclear generation, and hard physical assets.
Because they know what's coming.
Because they know that when the digital abstraction layer fails due to grid constraints and kinetic shocks, the only thing that matters is who physically controls the switch.
The digital revolution promised us this weightless escape from physical reality, but the truth is, it only chained us more heavily to the electrical grid. We have built a hyper-complex, highly fragile global architecture that demands absolute perfection from its supply chains. And we've done it right at the historical moment when those supply chains are the most vulnerable to kinetic disruption.
And that is the central paradox of the 2026 intelligence landscape. We possess the most advanced predictive models in human history. Models like World 3 that clearly and mathematically dictate the necessity of reducing our material throughput.
Yeah, the math is right there.
Yet our response as a species is to deploy thermodynamically exhaustive artificial intelligence to calculate the precise moment our natural resources will fail, burning our last remaining reserves just to power the calculation.
It's the ultimate Ouroboros, a snake eating its own tail, digitized, optimized, and heavily monetized. Well, operatives, we've mapped out the MIT 1972 World3 Blueprint, showing exactly how the BAU2 scenario predicted that pollution and environmental friction, not mere scarcity, would be our undoing. We've exposed the AI energy trap, the thermodynamic parasite that is draining our rapidly declining EROI and forcing the grid to its knees.
And we covered the kinetic triggers.
We analyzed the Hormuz Kill-Switch, proving that kinetic events in the Gulf instantly sever the logistical lifeline we absolutely need to build our green energy fire escape. And we've watched the elite weaponize this salience, trading derivatives on the apocalypse rather than trying to avert it. So I want to leave you with a final clinical thought to mull over. If the entire architecture of our future, from the most advanced generative AI models to the global green energy transition, relies absolutely on a fragile, fossil-fueled logistical system running perfectly without a single interruption, are we actually building a bridge to the future, or are we just accelerating the speed at which we hit the physical wall? It's a question of physical resources.
Generative AI tool to draft a memo, write some code, or generate an image, ask yourself, what physical resource was permanently burned somewhere out there in the real world just to give you that answer? Case file closed. The bigger the empire, the harder the fall. Stay ahead of the curve. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your intelligence analysis in the comments. Your contribution is vital to this lab. New briefings available every Saturday. You've been listening to Corporate Files Lab, briefings on AI, business, and geopolitics.